Okay, welcome in. I'm gonna do my best not to doze off and fall asleep as I'm recording this video, but I mean, it is what it is. So, week 16 is nearly here, and as I normally do on Wednesdays, I will be making my previews as to see who I think will win each game, and then at the end of the video, I'll let you know how I'm doing so far. So, Thursday night, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. They are 8-6, taking on the Denver Broncos, who are 9-5. These are currently the number 6th and 7th seed, respectively, in the AFC. So this is a crucial game for both these teams. I believe if Denver wins, they should lock up a playoff spot for the first time since the 2015-2016 season when they won the Super Bowl. And it feels like it was almost a decade ago, which it almost was. And as for the Chargers, they're trying to get back into the playoffs after missing it last year. So, again, a crucial game for both of these teams, respectively. I'm not trying to sound like I'm biased because I'm a Broncos fan, but there is optimism. And obviously, the Chargers beat them earlier in the year. So I'm sure Denver would love nothing more than to be able to at least split the season series with LA. If LA happens to win and they finish with the same record, then the Chargers will bump ahead of the Broncos in the standings. So a lot at stake, like I said, for a lot of teams, and especially for these two uh, Thursday night. So I will take Denver in this matchup. I think they should be able to get a win. They're on a hot streak now. They've won 5 in a row, and they've proven they can win away from home and at home as well. And this is critical because out of their 3 remaining games, 2 of them are away. I believe their last game at home against the Chiefs. So every game from here on out is going to be crucial if this team wants to advance and make the postseason, and then obviously position as well. Excuse me. Okay, so now we have a couple of Saturday games. The first one takes place in KC as the 13-1 Chiefs playing host to the 9-5 Houston Texans. Now, both these teams have already won their respective divisions. For KC, they're obviously still trying to hold on to that number 1 spot, and it's likely that they won't have Patrick Mahomes in this matchup. Will that affect the team play? It possibly can. But I mean, you really can't count them out as well. I mean, it doesn't matter who they have. I think Carson Wentz might be getting the starting nod. So he's a veteran quarterback and obviously has some experience with the Eagles and Commanders, respectively. There probably was another team, maybe the Rams, in that mix as well. So I'm sure his veteran experience can help this KC team possibly secure that number 1 spot. And if obviously that's crucial for both sides of the AFC and NFC, is that if you get the number 1 spot, you're at least guaranteed a week off once the wild card round kicks off. For the Houston Texans, I think they're more than likely going to finish as the number 4 team. I don't see them jumping ahead of the Steelers, even though they're only a game behind Pittsburgh. And they're certainly not catching Kansas City because they're 4 games behind them. And I believe the Bills have 10 wins or 11 wins. And I'd be very shocked if Houston won 2 of their last 3 and Buffalo lost 2 of their last 3. I don't see that happening. So I can easily see this being the KC as the number 1 seed and Houston finishing as the number 4. If Patrick Mahomes doesn't play, and I know I'm going to sound like a bit of a hypocrite because I just talked about how even though KC has Wentz, that they still can pull this one off. But if Mahomes is not able to play, I think Houston should take advantage of this. This could be a huge game for the Texans. Like I said, they really have nothing more to play for other than positioning. So if Houston does happen to win and the team to the right of them happens to lose, then they could possibly jump up to that number 3 seed. It's likely, but again, I'm not really going to sit here and say the Steelers are going to finish worse than the Texans. I mean, they've proven they are a very good team, but I'm going to be bold and say that the Texans take this one. Before I get on to the next game, I did pick a lot of away teams. We'll see how I do at the end of Monday night with my predictions. The other game to the right has the 9-5 Baltimore Ravens taking on the 10-4 Pittsburgh Steelers. This is critical. I believe the winner of this matchup will more than likely get the AFC North crown. There's still 2 more games to go after this week, so there's still a lot of potential as to what team is going to go where, whether you finish with a home field or you start as a wild card team. I'm going to take the Ravens in this matchup. I believe they should get their 10th win of the season. I think it'll be tough. Whenever the Ravens and Steelers play, it always seems like it's a one-possession game. And I think this is a very critical game. I mean, Baltimore, they want to be able to have home field advantage at least for the first round of the playoffs. If they finish as the number 5 seed, then they have to play away from home for at least a minimum of 3 games. And then once the Super Bowl comes around, then it doesn't matter who the away or home team is, because neither team really has home field advantage. You're just going to have a split of fans in the stadium. So I think the Ravens take this matchup, and it'll make things interesting as week 17 and 18, respectively, are around the corner, and we'll see who comes out on top of that matchup, or out of that division, I should say. All right, so the majority of the remaining games do take place on Sunday. I'm pretty sure there is a game on Monday. I will check as I'm going through this. So the first game takes place in Atlanta as the 7-7 Falcons are playing host to the New York Giants. Now, what's interesting is that I think Per Bix Jr., who Atlanta drafted in this past year's NFL draft, is going to be getting this start for the Falcons, and they are going to be benching Kirk Cousins. And I've kind of said over the last month or so that Atlanta, they're a shell of themselves, and Kirk Cousins is definitely not performing at the level that they were expecting him to. And it's a shame because they paid him a lot of money in the offseason to move from Minnesota to Atlanta to be their starting quarterback. But just inconsistency, and like I said, over the last month, he has not played that very well. My opinion, anybody else can disagree. I mean, it's just an opinion. So no need to get butthurt if you are a Falcons fan. You do happen to watch this, but I mean, just look at the tape. Up until the game when they played against the Raiders, which was on Monday night, he went 4 straight games without even throwing a touchdown, and you're paying him a lot of money to throw touchdowns. So I'm not really surprised about the move. But for Atlanta, this is critical because if they want to stay competitive and try to make the playoffs, they need this win. And then they need the Bucs to lose in order for them to have a shot at that NFC South title. Or if they want to take a chance at a wild card position, they got to win the next 2 out of the next 3 games minimum and pray that the Washington Commanders lose at least 2 of the last 3 just so they can play catch up. And it's asking a lot, especially this late in the season. So, yeah, time's a ticking if you're a Falcons fan. As for the Giants, they've been eliminated for quite some time. I'm kind of torn on this one. I really want to say the Falcons get this game. They should, in theory, but they've also should have had a lot of other games that they've lost. So this is a flip of a coin. The Giants could possibly go into Atlanta and pull off an upset. I wouldn't be surprised if that even was the case. Again, the Giants have nothing to play for. Atlanta has a lot to play for. And the thing is that even if they don't make the playoffs, they're sitting at the middle of the pack or just around that for this upcoming draft. So it's either you lose your last 3, you drop down the standings, and you get a better pick, or you're basically around that 17th, 18th, 19th spots, 20th spot, and you're looking at a middle pick if you still have your first rounder. I haven't had a chance to look at that. So, yeah, I'm going to give that to the Falcons. Again, that's not a whole lot I can talk about, even though I've talked about them for like 3 or 4 minutes now. But, yeah, if I was a Falcons fan, I'd be pulling the hair out of my head. That's why I shave my head. All right, the next one has the 3-11 Carolina Panthers taking on the 7-7 Arizona Cardinals. So the Cardinals are in a similar position as the Falcons. They have the same record, and they are also fighting for a spot in their respective division. And if that doesn't work out, they still possibly could get a wild card spot. But I'm pretty sure both the Falcons and the Cardinals, respectively, are 2 games behind the Washington Commanders. So if either of these teams want to make a late season push to make the postseason, they have to win at least, like I said, 2 of the last 3 games minimum. It'd be fantastic if they could win 3 in a row, but it's very unlikely. And then I'm pretty sure that Arizona is only one game behind Seattle and the Rams respectively, for that NFC West crown. So it's a very crowded division with three teams only separated by one game. So win here and a loss to the Rams and a loss for the Seahawks could possibly push Arizona back on top of that division, pending how they played in that division if they beat the Rams and Seahawks respectively. So a very critical game for the Cardinals. I will have them as the victor in this one, just to make things interesting down the stretch. All right, the Chicago Bears, 4-10, taking on the 12-2 Detroit Lions. Both of these teams coming off losses last week. For Chicago, they have now lost 8 in a row, and obviously that's not a good sign for this team, considering they started off 4-2. And as for the Detroit Lions, they put up 42 points, I think, against the Bills, but unfortunately but it wasn't meant to be, and they came up short. So the thing with Detroit is they're definitely starting to show they're more human than superhuman, if that makes any sense. And the amount of injuries that they have just been adding up over time. Will that eventually catch up with them when the playoffs start? Only time will tell. And obviously the big thing for Detroit is, even with all the injuries, they're still in first place of not only their division, but first place in the NFC. And they got a lot to play for over the next 3 weeks because they're still trying to clinch that division. But Minnesota's right on their tail, and the Eagles are, I think, just a game behind them as well for that top seed. And it's very crucial, as I've said before when I was talking about the Chiefs, is that if you're in first place, you want to hold on to that spot, because if you can have an extra week to heal up, rest, that could be a major advantage, a major bonus for your team, considering you only have one team in each conference getting the bye week, unlike 5-6 years ago when you had the top two teams. I'm going to be bold on this one. I'm really going to be bold, and I guarantee I'm going to be wrong by a mile. But I think Chicago, they got a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They want to stop this losing streak. Caleb Williams is definitely frustrated with his play, and the team is definitely not gelling the way that they should be. So I say Chicago pulls this one off. They obviously are a little embarrassed about that Thanksgiving loss in Detroit. So I think they come back and get a little bit of revenge on the Lions and pull out the W. All right. The next matchup has the Indianapolis Colts, 6-8, taking on the 3-11 Tennessee Titans. Indy suffered a loss last week, dropping them 2 games below 500. They're still mathematically in a playoff position. I think they're 2 games behind the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken. So this game could be meaningful, but it could also be meaningless at the same time. So if for some reason the Chargers happen to win on Thursday night, that would eliminate the Colts from any postseason, I believe, because they can't catch up to Houston, because Houston already has that AFC South crown. So yeah, if the Chargers happen to win on Thursday, Indy's would be officially eliminated, and then Sunday's game and then the following 2 weekends will mean absolutely nothing for the Colts. So if the Chargers happen to lose on Thursday, then obviously Indy still has a tiny bit of a prayer of making the playoffs. But I think, as I've said several times before, if you're in a position and you're relying on other teams to lose just so you can try to win and advance and try to catch up, that's a lot to ask. You can't rely on other teams to lose just so you could try to succeed. Again, just my opinion, and I don't think I'm that wrong, but again, everyone is entitled to disagree with somebody else's thoughts. But I think Indy should take this matchup. Tennessee, I don't know what they're doing. Is Will Levi really the answer, or Will Levis really the answer for the Titans? I'm not sure. I think he's in his 2nd or 3rd year now, and the Titans really haven't shown that they're making progression. Feels like they're regressing, if anything. So, yeah, I think Indy should get this win, whether they're eliminated from the postseason before the kickoff or not. They should have a bounce-back game. All right, the 4-10 New York Jets are taking on the 8-6 Los Angeles Rams, and I never would have guessed that at the beginning of the season, or just over a month into the season, the Rams were 1-4, and now they're 8-6, and they have the lead in the NFC West. And I talked about that before with the Cardinals, and I probably will talk about it again once I talk about the Seahawks. But that's a very close division. I think whoever wins that particular um, division will probably get the third seed, possibly the fourth seed, depending on how who else is there. So in the East, you got the Eagles; they're atop. In the South, you have the Buccaneers who have 8 wins. So yeah, the Buccaneers and the Rams. One of those two teams should finish. One of those two divisions should finish third and fourth, because let's be honest, nobody's catching the Eagles. Well, you can't catch the Eagles or the Lions because a lot of them have 4 games on you, and there's only 3 games remaining. So yeah, so I think the NFC South and the NFC West should finish third and fourth respectively. For the Rams, they're starting to gel, and which is what they've been, considering. Like I said, they started off 1-4. Now they're 8-6. That means they've basically won 7 and only lost 2, which is they're 7-2 since week 5. So it just goes to show that the team is definitely starting to gel. They're definitely getting their ish together, and they should go into New York and pull off a win, and that possibly could push them a little further into possibly A, securing a playoff spot, and B, getting that NFC West crown. Okay, a crucial game in Washington as the Commanders are playing host to the Philadelphia Eagles. Washington is 9-5. I think they currently have the number 7 seed in the NFC, while the Eagles are 12-2. So obviously, if Eagles happen to win, they'll lock up that NFC East division and still put a lot of pressure on the Lions for that first seed in the NFC. And if Washington does happen to win, then they will A, make the playoffs, and B, obviously anybody that's below them will then officially be eliminated. So a crucial game for both these teams. Neither one of them wants to lose, but unfortunately I think one will, and I think that will end up being the Commanders. I think they will end up losing this matchup. The Eagles, they're just red hot. I mean, I think they've now won 10 straight games, which is a franchise record. So congratulations on that if you're an Eagles fan. And even if Washington does happen to lose, they still should have a somewhat comfortable lead. Well, I say that, but then I'm thinking the Seahawks are only a game behind them. So if Washington loses and Seattle happens to win, Seattle could bump Washington out of a playoff spot. So this is actually a bigger game than I thought for the Commanders. But yeah, I'm still going to go with my instinct, and I think Philadelphia pulls this one out. All right. Now we're off to the AFC North, where we have the 6-8 Cincinnati Bengals taking on the 3-11 Cleveland Browns. Critical game for Cincinnati. Cleveland's obviously eliminated. They're just playing spoiler at this point, if that's even possible. So just like the Colts, the Bengals, they are both 6-8, and they're both relying on the Chargers to lose, so that one of these two teams could possibly make a push for that 7th wildcard position in the AFC. I think Cincinnati wins this game regardless of whether they're eliminated or not. They could easily be playing for pride if the Chargers happen to win. But if the Chargers happen to lose, then the door is still very wide open for the Bengals. So I will give the edge to the Bengals. I think they should improve to 7-8. I say improve, but they should get back to close to 500 with a 7-8 record. But again, whether they make the playoffs or not is entirely going to come down to the winner of the Thursday night matchup. Okay, the Seattle Seahawks are 8-6. They are currently outside of a playoff picture, taking on the 12-2 Minnesota Vikings. I think it's insane how well the Vikings are doing, and how unfortunate it is that they have the exact same record as Detroit. I did take a peek at Week 18 schedule, and I'm pretty sure the Vikings and the Lions are playing. I guarantee if those two teams are still neck and neck in the standings, that should be a Sunday night game, and that would be a fantastic game to watch if I want to be completely honest with you, because obviously one team, whoever wins, will more than likely get the NFC North crown and possibly a first round bye, depending on how the Eagles do. For the Seahawks, bit of a roller coaster the last couple of weeks. It looked like they were going to start taking a bit of a step forward and, possibly clinching that NFC West division. They still can't. They have the same record as the Rams, but I'm guessing the reason the Rams are ahead of them is because maybe they either beat the Seahawks earlier in the season or something to do with points, whatever the case may be is. But that conference is so close in the standings. I mean, the AFC is close as well, but just the fact that one loss could either put you down further in the standings or one win could push you up back into a playoff position. So this is a huge game for the Seahawks, and they obviously want to have a bounce back game after losing to the Packers. They don't want to lose back-to-back home games to NFC North opponents, but the NFC North has 3 teams that are more than likely going to make the playoffs too. So it's not like they're losing to a below or a sub 500 team. I'm going to say Minnesota pulls this one off. Unfortunately, they are the better team on paper, and I have a little bit more faith in Sam Darnold. I'm not sure what Geno Smith's health is going to be like, especially after he got knocked out in that game against the Packers. So if the Seahawks do happen to start their backup guy, again, I think Minnesota should win this one easily. If Geno does happen to come back by a miracle, then maybe the Seahawks can put up a fight. I mean, he did help lead this team to 2 games above 500 record this late in the season, so he's doing something right. But again, his health is going to be a major factor moving forward. And if he does not play, I think Minnesota might have a little bit of an easier road to get the victory. Okay, now we're off to the AFC East as the 11-3 Buffalo Bills are taking on the 3-11 New England Patriots. So basically, these teams, their records, they're just swapped. There's not a whole lot I can say about this. The Buffalo, they're like a juggernaut, and Josh Allen, I've said this time and time again, he will be the league's MVP. He can run, he can pass, he can catch a ball to himself. Like he's so talented, it's scary. And I think if the Bills win, which they should, and if for some crazy reason the Chiefs happen to lose, they could pull within a game of that number 1 seed in the AFC. And I've said this time and time again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, that number 1 seed can definitely help you rest up guys that are injured. If somebody is hurt, they possibly could come back for a divisional matchup, but we'll have to wait and see, obviously, once week 18 is done to see where they're at in the standings. They've already wrapped up the AFC East division, so nobody's catching them. And they're going to be a threat in the AFC. I could easily see Buffalo making an AFC championship appearance. And I'm sure if you're a Bills fan, you would love to see them take one more step further and get back to a Super Bowl. But it's hard to really bet against the KC and Patrick Mahomes. And I guarantee he'll be back before the playoffs start, or at least by the time the playoffs start. So, even though the Bills are super great, they're unfortunately, they still got to go through KC more than likely, unless KC happens to lose 2 of the last 3 games and Buffalo happens to win 2 or win all 3 remaining games on their schedule. So Buffalo should get the win. They should improve to 12-3. But again, just because you get to 12-3 doesn't mean you're guaranteed that number 1 seed, because if KC wins, then they pretty much have the number 1 seed locked in, because they'd still be 2 games ahead of the Bills if the Bills win this. And again, you'd have to rely on that team to lose. And I've said this before, if you're relying on other teams to lose and concentrating more on that than your team winning, then you're clearly not doing it the right job. So I'm not going to keep talking about this game, but the Bills should get the victory. Now we got, I'm going to be honest, this is probably going to be the lowest rating game of the entire week, as we have the 2-12 Las Vegas Raiders taking on the 3-11 Jacksonville Jaguars. Unless you're a diehard Raiders and Jacksonville Jaguars fan, this is not going to be a must-see TV. Both these teams are tanking. Both these teams are obviously looking to get a high draft pick in this upcoming draft. So, if you're both these teams, why not just put zeros across the board? Just have a tie. I would love to be able to pick a tie, and I really should pick a tie, but I tried picking a tie before, and it didn't go as planned. So if I absolutely had to make a decision on this, I'll pick the Jaguars, but it's by like a very, very narrow or a slim edge. Okay. The Miami Dolphins 6-8 taking on the 6-8 San Francisco Giants. The Dolphins are in the same position as the Colts and the Bengals, as they're hoping that the Chargers can lose Thursday, and then that would still give them a chance at making the playoffs. But obviously, if the Chargers happen to win on Thursday, then the Dolphins, oh my God, the Dolphins, the Bengals, and the Colts would obviously all be eliminated, and they'd have really nothing to play for on Friday. The San Francisco 49ers, it's been a miserable season, and if they happen to lose this game, then they will officially be below 500 for the first time in a couple of years, which is unfortunate because this team was favored to get back to the Super Bowl since they made it last year, and they made the playoffs, I think, 3 straight years, maybe even 4 straight years, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to be tough to see this team not in a playoff position. But with that being said, there's 3 games remaining. They're 2 games behind the Rams for first place in the NFC West. Granted, the Rams did beat the 49ers just last week or the week before. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's a way that the 49ers get the NFC West division, even if they win out their remaining 3 games, because I feel that the tiebreaker between the Seahawks and the Rams might play a bit of a factor. So, this could be a lost game for both these teams, unfortunately. But if I had to make a winner in this one, I would pick Miami, only because the 49ers have been devastated by injuries. And it is unfortunate that injuries do play a toll on a team. Okay, the Sunday night matchup. I believe there's just this one and the Monday night matchup. So I'm almost done doing my previews for Week 16. Has the 6-8 Dallas Cowboys taking on the 8-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Cowboys, even though they're still 2 games below 500, they're still technically not eliminated. But I'm going to take Tampa Bay in this one. They should improve to 9-6, which means the Cowboys would drop to 6-9. And if that was the case, they would then officially be eliminated from the playoffs, because if they lose and say Washington is still at 9 wins, they'd be 3 games behind Washington for that last playoff spot in the NFC. And with 2 games remaining after this one, I just don't see the Cowboys. I mean, they would technically be eliminated from the postseason. So if the Cowboys want to stave off elimination, they have to beat the Buccaneers. But the Buccaneers lately haven't shown me a lot of weaknesses with this team, and it seems to be doing just fine away from Cleveland. So I think Tampa should get the win. If they win and say the Falcons lose and maybe the Saints lose, then the Buccaneers should be able to wrap that division up for the 4th straight year and the 2nd straight year with Mayfield at the helm. Now, speaking of the Saints, now, I know when I did my video yesterday, I went on a bit of a confusing rant about why this team is still not eliminated. Because when I was looking at the standings, I was looking at it from like a wild card position, because the Saints have 5 wins, the Washington Commanders have 9. So there's a 4-game difference there. But I didn't take into the factor that the reason they're not eliminated is because they could, and it's going to sound crazy, they could possibly catch the Buccaneers for that NFC South crown, but that's like a less than 1% chance of that happening. There's no way the Saints are winning 3 games in a row, and there's certainly no way the Buccaneers are losing 3 games in a row. And even if the Buccaneers happen to win and the Saints happen to win, then they'd still have a 3-game advantage over the Saints with just 2 weeks remaining. So I'm pretty sure the Saints season should should it be done by the end of Monday night, especially when they're taking on the 10-4 Packers. So again, I will predict Green Bay wins this, and with the victory, they not only should lock up a playoff spot in the NFC, but they should officially eliminate the Saints, who, let's be honest, they should be eliminated regardless. I don't care if there's a slim picket chance, like I said, that they catch up to the Bucs in that division. But then you also got to take into factor that the Falcons are 7-7, so the Falcons are 2 games up on the Saints, while the Buccaneers are 3 games up on them. So a huge hill to climb if the Saints were to try to make a miracle and get back into a playoff spot. But yeah, let's be realistic and think logically that there's no way that's happening. All right, that's going to take care of my preview for week 16 of the National Football League. I can't believe it's only 2 more weeks. This is so crazy. So heading into week number 16, I have an overall record of 157 and 67. So I'm 90 games above 500. So even if I happen to go and all my predictions are wrong for the next 3 weeks, I think I've said this before, I would still finish above 500. And that's all I was really aiming for at the beginning of the season, was to try and have an above 500 record. Alrighty. So as always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. Until next time, and as always, take care.